He's told me before that baptism is a picture.
Mm-hmm. Another parable. Every time somebody goes swimming, they get baptized. Every time a kid jumps into a wave in the ocean, he gets baptized. Because baptism simply means to submerge. That's all it means. If you're in the Navy on a submarine, you get baptized every time you go out on patrol. Because it just means submerge. That's what it means. If that's all it means to you, so what? But the Lord says, I want to teach you something. And so here's a parable for you. When someone has come to the Lord and submitted to Him for salvation, the book of Romans talks about this very carefully in detail. It says in the 6th chapter that when we come to Christ, He submerges us into His death. Here's Jesus on the cross. Now, we can't understand this with our eyes because it's just beyond our ability. Jesus died approximately 1,981 years ago, if our calendar's anywhere near correct. That's a long time ago. But the Lord can take us today. Someone comes to the Lord and says, I want to be yours. The Lord will take that man and put him into the cross, submerge him into it. Romans says if we've been baptized into Christ, we've been baptized into His death. And so the word means submerged. If we've been submerged into Christ, we've been submerged into His death. And being in His death, He says you're also in His resurrection. So when Jesus resurrected from the grave, if you believe He really did resurrect, completely no longer subject to death, and says you are in Him, what happened to you? You also have been resurrected, no longer subject to death. So we have this ceremony that we call baptism. The purpose of a ceremony is to be a parable, to give us a visual picture. We use in speeches, in teaching in public school or Sunday school class, we use a lot of visual aids. We have pictures, we have models, we have various tools and things that we bring out to let people see this represents something so you can better understand it. So the Lord says, I'm going to give you a visual aid here to give you a picture of what being put into Christ, into His death means. We will have you submerged into a bath of water for a moment and then lifted out. This pictures your death and burial and resurrection. Now there's a purpose for that. There's 4 entities that benefit from that picture. Picture doesn't mean anything unless somebody sees it. So the first person sees it is you, the one that's being baptized. It's so that you can get a visual picture of what really happened to me. I was put into the death and the burial and the resurrection of the Lord. That pictures that. It also shows it to angels. It says when angels see people come to the Lord, they rejoice. And so this is a visual picture for them. It also shows it to the rest of the church, the people that are around us. Now, this submerging you into water is not what saves you, but it's a picture of what did save you, which is being put into the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord. So it shows it to the rest of the church people, and it shows it to the world around. Now, sometimes the world around, maybe most of the time, they won't understand what it's about. But they might have opportunities to say, why do you do that? And when they come to you and say, why do you do that? There's your opportunity to share truth with them. Don't tell them they need to get baptized. Tell them they need to come to the Lord. The Lord will then use the parable to explain to them what really happened. Your salvation is because you've been put into the death of the Lord and His resurrection. It isn't because you got put under water. But it's a good parable.